Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. My name is Allie. I'm a second-year MBA student working with Trista in the Corporate and Alumni Relations office. And we are absolutely delighted to have with us today Melanie. Oh my goodness, we went over last names before.
DiBiasio.
Melanie DiBiasio. Oh, goodness gracious. But thank you, Melanie, for being with us here today. Melanie is a motivated and passionate digital marketer with 15 years of experience in digital marketing and communications. She's a 2016 Eisenberg MBA graduate. Melanie completed her degree online while working for Ocean Spray Cranberries. Melanie accepted a new role this past July with Ocean Spray and is currently the Senior Manager of Digital Precision Marketing. In this role, she manages the strategy and execution of the Ocean Spray website and social media channels globally, and also works to ensure consistency and strength of the brand around the world. Melanie plans and executes digital marketing campaigns focused on generating maximum engagement and driving sales for the brand, while also maintaining awareness and brand affinity. Earlier this month, she presented at South by Southwest, and today Melanie will be sharing a presentation titled TikTok, Driving Culture Through Contact, which she presented at the Social Media Strategy Summit. Thank you, Melanie, for being here with us and allowing a private showing of your presentation.
Of course, and thank you guys all for joining. I am going to share my screen and I'll jump right in. I will leave plenty of time at the end for questions. I think the content here is only about 30 minutes, so we should have plenty of time if anyone has questions. And of course, if you'd like to stop me along the way, that's fine too. So, all right, can everyone see my screen? Okay, awesome. So thought it would be fitting to start with this meme, which not only was actually one of our first pieces of content that we released post Nathan, which we now measure our time at Ocean Spray in pre-Nathan and post-Nathan, but also just because it really represents, the transformation that our brand underwent after what happened with TikTok, which I'll go into a bit more detail on, but I'm sure most of you have already seen. The funny part is with this picture, like our challenge for many years, and certainly for the 10 years that I've been with Ocean Spray, has been how to turn the brand on the left into the brand on the right. And it wasn't something that we could have done ourselves overnight. It was something that, would have taken us years, and maybe we could have gotten there, but we got extremely lucky and had a moment that was kind of lightning in a bottle for us, and we're able to transform our brand essentially overnight, which was a good thing in a lot of ways in terms of the audience that it brought in, the opportunities that it afforded us. And at the same time, it was also very challenging because we weren't necessarily ready to take that plunge. So what I'm talking about today is kind of what happened and how we learned from it, and how we worked really quickly and nimbly to make changes to the way that we were presenting our brand on social media, and particularly on TikTok in the, after the events of September 26th, 2020. So, starting here of who we were, here's a snapshot of our Instagram handle prior to Nathan's video coming out. This is the type of content that we came out with. Our audience was older. It was predominantly, 55 plus women. That was our core target audience. It's also our core juice buyer. And this was the type of content that resonated with that audience. This content, while it looks very different than what you see today, and while it might not resonate with some of you and some of our current audience, it did resonate really well with the people that we were talking to at that point in time. And while we've shifted, we've had to do that in a way where we're also still not alienating those people, because they still do represent a large portion of our buyers, although it may now not be our largest audience on social media. So, having this type of content may have changed for us, especially on Instagram. But we are still doing content like this in our paid advertising. We're still doing content like this in on Facebook to a certain extent because our audience there hasn't changed as much. But, you know, again, previously we had that same audience that I mentioned, like 55 plus women primarily across all of our platforms. And so all of our content looked like this, and it looked the same no matter which platform you were looking at. You know, the product itself was product-centric. It was very heavily produced. So you can see all of this is kind of perfect, right? It was recipe driven. And at its core, again, it was kind of one-dimensional, right? It spoke to a certain thing that we were looking for and a certain audience that we had at the time. So when Nathan's video came out in September, we wanted to use the moment to take this time to pause and potentially shift our communications. And the pillars that we were looking to shift were really, you know, from big business to co-op, farmer owned. So some of you may or may not know that Ocean Spray is a farmer owned cooperative. So that means that the 700 family farms that produce our cranberries actually own the company. We have always been, but a lot of people don't know that. And so it's really, how do we tell that story? How do we tell people and bring that to life more so, especially among millennials and Gen Z who do tend to be more purpose driven. You know, we have a really strong purpose driven company that a lot of people don't recognize. How do we move from being product centric to consumer centric? So, you know, again, what you saw on that last page, we were very product centric in everything that we did. Instead of talking about ourselves, how do we talk to our consumer and make sure we're surrounding that person with the message that they're looking for in the right time? And we do that by being part of cultural moments, by being part of trending moments. How do we move from tiny choices have a big impact, which was our tagline at the time, to positivity is a healthy choice, which is kind of what we're still working towards in our overarching communications, really focusing on that positivity message that Nathan brought to life so well for everyone, and really showcasing that being a part of wellness. So we still want to be a health and wellness driven company, but we can talk about mental wellness and positivity as a part of that. From harvest a fruitful future to harvest positivity, again, showcasing the enjoyment that people get from our products, and moving from, you know, this is more long-term, but from a cranberry brand to a lifestyle brand. So, you know, we've shown that we have the capacity to grow our audience, to gain a new audience, that we have the awareness, we have familiarity. So we really have to create that movement and really to bring us to that next step. So who we've become from a social standpoint is very different. So you can see here, you know, again, in some of the messages I showed on that last page about being a part of cultural moments, being a part of trending moments, that's what we're leaning really heavily in on. And we're not doing that across all of our channels, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but we're doing that certainly very heavily on Instagram and on TikTok. So, you know, we still have some product messages here. You'll see, you know, the current topical post, and this was a post that had a bunch of different bottles, and it was really talking more about, you know, people being at home and kind of dreaming of a vacation, and how do our different products kind of give you that feeling that you're on vacation, even though you might not be able to do it. So it's still leaning in on that moment in time of what people are thinking right now, consumer centric at its core, even though it's still product. The same with pink. This was on Wednesdays, we drink pink instead of on Wednesdays, we wear pink. So just leaning in on things that resonate with our audience. Obviously, we also have, you know, Bernie Sanders, we have Among Us, we have the stock market, you know, GameStop situation. So we have Juice on Bruce, which was when everyone was doing their like elf on a shelf, you know, takes. So we're trying to lean in really on that consumer-centric message and on trending moments. So again, we've become consumer-centric. We've become much more youthful. We're trying to be funny. I think it sometimes hits and sometimes doesn't, and that's okay. And trendy. And of course, relevant. So making sure that at the end of the day, whether or not we're getting, you know, a click or a like, we want to make sure that people are recognizing, like, hey, Ocean Spray gets it. And we actually are seeing a lot of that in comments, which is exciting as well. So here I'll talk a little bit about joining TikTok. So when the video that you see here, and I won't play it because I can never get audio and video and things to work on Zoom. But if you guys haven't seen it, Nathan is 420 Dogface 208 on TikTok. If you scroll down, it's the one with 80 million views. You'll find it. He launched this video in September 2020, and it went live on a Friday. And I got a text about it that night. And we thought it was funny and cool and creative, but didn't think much of it. And by Sunday, my phone was blowing up and we were already trying to figure out how we deal with this. What are we going to do about it? And our strategy behind it was interesting. We had two options, right? At that moment, we could jump right in and start to play with it and start to talk to him or do something about it. Or we could pause and kind of reflect on it and see how things were taking off organically and where we had the best opportunity to play. And we took the latter strategy. And some will say that we waited because we didn't know what to do, which isn't entirely wrong, but we also waited intentionally because the video was just performing so strongly on its own. We were getting natively just so many messages of encouragement and, people just loving what Nathan was doing. Our brand was just really top of mind, and people started taking off and doing their own versions of his video and buying our product. And then we started seeing pictures of like empty juice shelves because people were buying so much of our product. And so, we didn't want to ruin the moment by jumping in as the brand and potentially doing the wrong thing. And so we really took the time to think about what the right thing was. And what we felt was, this moment that Nathan has created for us and for the world has been so powerful that we want to do something for him equally powerful. And so if you don't know, the reason that he posted this video and the reason that he was skateboarding in the first place is that his truck broke down. And this was a common occurrence that his truck would break down on his way to work. And he always had the longboard in his car, and that was his method of transportation if his truck broke down. And so he took this video just riding to work when his truck broke down with his favorite juice and his favorite song. And so we bought him a new truck, and we had a local dealership deliver it, took a video of it, and really wanted to do that kind of as our way of thanking him. And then, of course, we kind of joined the movement, right? Our CEO created his first or his TikTok account to create his version of the video. And then we decided, okay, do we want to create an ocean spray TikTok? Now our CEO is on TikTok. At this point, that's like Mick Fleetwood, Stevie Nicks, like everyone was creating a TikTok to be a part of this. And people were tagging ocean spray, not even knowing that we didn't exist on the platform. And so not having a strategy, not having a content, not having anything, we jumped in and we started at least engaging with content on the platform as the brand. And then really we took the time before we even posted our first TikTok of our own to rethink our social strategy. So what's on this page is really the before and after of joining TikTok, which didn't just change that one platform, but it changed what we were doing across the board. So before, we had a very Facebook-led strategy. We would create content really for Facebook because it was our biggest channel, and we would use that same content across the board. We had, again, that same content across all channels. We had a core audience demographic, as I mentioned, of an older woman demographic, and that product-centric self-serving content. Once we joined TikTok, again, we didn't say, okay, now TikTok's going to be our North Star instead of Facebook. We said our audience on TikTok is very different than our audience on Facebook. And our audience on Instagram is kind of a blend of those two. And on Twitter, we've honestly always had a very unique audience that we've never really tapped into. So our Twitter audience has always been more heavily male than some of our other platforms. It's been a little bit younger. And we've just really never taken that opportunity to create Twitter specific content because it was always a smaller platform for us, which it still is. But we've found ways to leverage it in a different way with this idea-led strategy. So that means when we go into a month to concept, we come up with ideas that are based on what consumers are thinking, that are based on, holidays or the season or astrology, which is something new that we've, started talking about because it's really relevant among Gen Z. We create platform deliberate content. So certain things, like when we engaged in the GameStop stock conversation, that made more sense on Twitter. That's where the conversation was happening. So we tweeted that, but then we also created a visual of our tweet and we put it on Instagram because it was an interesting concept that people were talking about on Instagram, but it didn't really have its own like visual. So we created a tweet and then we made that into a visual for Instagram. So still platform deliberate, still the same idea, but just doing it differently and making sure that you're taking advantage of the strong suits of each of the platforms. Our core audience across most channels is now more diverse, and on Instagram in particular, as well as TikTok for sure, it's primarily 18 to 34, so much younger. And our engagement rates are up 750% or more just on Instagram. So again, TikTok was a net new platform for us, but by changing our strategy of what we were doing across the board, we increased not only our followers, but also our engagement rates on the other channels. And TikTok, I'll talk a little bit more about too in a minute in terms of our growth and what we've done there. One of the other learnings that we had from all of this is the importance of user-generated content. So we previously looked at user-generated content, but we didn't do much with it. We didn't really share a whole lot of what people were doing. We engaged with it and we liked content and we thanked people for it, but we didn't really embrace it. And so once we joined TikTok and started to get a little bit more into that culture and seeing how important UGC and working with influencers and creators was on TikTok, we realized that we should probably do that more so. So we created this series on Instagram called The Weekly Harvest, where we just go through and find content that we like that other people have posted using our brand. And we just actively share that. It helps us to engage our audience, even if we're not posting to the feed. It helps us to drive users to our feed to see what we are doing there. Involve our grower owners. So this is another opportunity for how do we better showcase that we're farmer owned. So we're actually launching this or next month in April, a Grower of the Month series that will be on our Instagram stories, where our growers will take it over and talk a little bit about what they're doing for harvest. And again, just talk about the company and being farmer owned. So that's another great, kind of learning of all this process is how do we enable UGC, but also even our posts from our own growers. It helps us to be more conversational and to create shareable content. So we're not just doing more with users and with influencers, but we're sharing more of what they do. So it feels just more like a community. It feels like we're listening. And it gives us more content. So at the end of the day, like, even just selfishly, it gives us more content without having to pay or having to create that content. And influencers. So a lot of people see Nathan as an influencer for us. He actually was not technically a paid influencer for us until last month when we did have our campaign with him for the Super Bowl. So when he posted his initial video, again, that was completely organic. We had nothing to do with it. We didn't know it was coming, but we rode the coattails of it for sure. And a lot of the people who saw, as things unfolded with Nathan, even after we gave him the truck, even after, we actually gifted him a honeymoon as well, because he got engaged shortly thereafter. So we tried to do a lot of things to do right by him. And a lot of people continually just posted, when are you guys going to put him in a commercial, give this guy some money, pay him for what he did. And while we weren't quite going, all in on that route right away, we did do a campaign with him for the Super Bowl, in which we did pay him officially as an influencer, and we had him release a TikTok dance during the game, and some other custom content that he created with our products that he had a lot of fun with it. We had a lot of fun with it. It really helped us to kind of bring that partnership together to tell people, hey, like, we hear you, we're doing this to celebrate everything that happened this past year that we, and the relationship that we have with him. So this video that you see here, that was kind of the cornerstone of the campaign that got about 6 million views. So not nearly as many as his organic one, but still for an influencer partnership, very strong. You can see a couple other examples here that I'm going to talk about quickly because I think they're both really interesting. So two very different examples of working with influencers. The one on the left was almost more like a Nathan scenario where he created this video organically. We did not pay him for it. His TikTok is Blonde Goblin, if you want to go look up this video, but this was on Thanksgiving. And he just posted this hilarious video of serving cranberry sauce at Thanksgiving. And we just loved it. So we reached out to him and we were like, we'd really like to share this. And he initially wanted to just let us do whatever we wanted to do with it. And he didn't even want to get paid for it. We actually did end up paying him because we didn't feel right about just taking his content. But just the fact that we helped amplify what he did and get him more followers. And he actually started getting approached by other brands to do paid sponsorships after this, because of what we did to help him grow his popularity. So I thought that was really interesting. So the video got 1.2 million views, which was actually 700,000 of those were on our channel and 300,000 were on his. So and his probably would have been a little bit less, although it did go pretty viral on TikTok. But our amplification really helped him. The one in the middle was the opposite. So this is Nick DiGiovanni. He does a lot of videos like this, both paid and unpaid. He's more of like a cooking recipe focused TikTok creator. And we approached him to do something custom for, again, similarly for the holiday season. And his video, while it got 5 million total views, 68,000 of those were on our channel and 3 million were on his. So he's bigger than us. He was more popular than us, but still we had a mutually beneficial relationship. So I think kind of the net of how we've learned to work with influencers is you want to work with somebody who already has a relationship with your brand in some capacity. So Nick actually did reach out to us and said, I love your brand. I want to do something, but we had to pay him a little bit more. We had to, we worked a little bit harder. And he got the majority of the views and benefited on that one. Whereas Blonde Goblin was the opposite. And so the mutually beneficial relationship, the authenticity of it, and again, them actually being a fan of the product in real life, and then giving them the runway to do their thing. So in all of these examples, this was not like Ocean Spray's idea of what these people would do. It was allowing what they do to bring to life a message or a product for us. Which was an important lesson and I think a really key difference to how we used to approach influencers and how we do now. We used to approach it very much with the brief and saying, these are your messages and hit on these messages. And we might even be prescriptive about the specific imagery or video that we want you to use and how we want you to do it. We don't do that anymore. And I think this method has been much more successful for us. Diving in a little bit deeper on TikTok. So, again, we did not have a TikTok channel in September of 2020. We now actually, this presentation was about a month ago. We now have about 95,000 followers on TikTok, making it our second biggest channel. So it went from 0 to our second biggest channel to Facebook. And we didn't do a whole lot to make that happen. So we're very lucky in that way. That being said, it has leveled out more than it did before. And now it's really up to our content to bring that to life. So this is a snapshot of the month of December, because it had kind of the most different type of things that I can show to you. And obviously, would love all of you guys to take a look at our TikTok and see even how we've evolved since December. But this was an example of, you'll see here the number 1, 2, and 3 posts of the month are highlighted. They're all extremely different. So again, we went into TikTok without having a strategy, without knowing what content we were going to put out there, without having ideas for it. And we just said, you know what, we're going to test and learn and see what sticks. And what we've learned is that we can vary it up. We can do very different things. What works the best for us is taking advantage of, again, those cultural trends or what's trending on TikTok, whether that's a sound, whether that's a video or, a video or like a filter, anything like that. Any of those types of things, if we participate and we do it right, we get a ton of views. So this one here that you see is the most ridiculous, probably one video that we've ever produced on TikTok, but it was huge. And it was just putting this weird filter on our bottles and making them human. If you see actually one of the more recent posts that we put out there that skyrocketed us really from the 80,000 that you see here to the 95 that we're at today. It was when we put our juice on different, on a skateboard and on a couple other different things and pushed it because there was a trending sound that went, wee. And if we did that with our bottle, and it got us like 10,000 new followers. So you never know what's going to work, and nothing is too crazy or weird. But at the same time, we can still do some of the types of things that we used to do if we do it right. So the number 2 post here was a curated, custom built post that this was more produced video, probably one of the more produced videos that we've done. And it was called the When Fruits Bounce test. And what we did was because cranberries bounce, and actually it used to be the way that we tested if a cranberry was good or not. If it bounces, it's good because they're hollow. And so we had this thing called a bounce board that would tell us if a cranberry bounced, meaning that it's good and it can move on in the production process. And if it didn't, there's probably something wrong with it, because if it's not hollow, it might be shriveled or rotten or something. So anyway, knowing that cranberries bounce, and obviously not most other fruits do, we just made kind of a funny video where, a pineapple fell and just plopped on the ground, and even the grapes didn't really do a great job of bouncing, but the cranberries really got some action. And so that was, again, more of a produced video, and that did really well on TikTok too, just because it still was relevant. It had a little element of humor, and still kind of resonated with our audience. And then number 3 was our New Year's post that we did with Nathan. So we did kind of a Happy New Year with Nathan. Some of this other content that you see here were things that either didn't work or didn't work as well. And some of them we spent a ton of time on and they didn't work, and some of them we didn't. So this was one where we worked with a cookie decorator to create custom cookies for us. This was an influencer post. This one here that you see in the middle of number 1 and number 3, this was a global post that we did with all of our different regions where we passed the cheers. That was for New Year's. That one actually took a lot of time and effort and didn't quite do as well. So you never really know. A lot of these fell in the middle, but always testing and learning and kind of figuring out, like the cookie decorator. I think one of our key lessons was the more kind of produced piece of content like that doesn't work. Whereas the more produced piece of content with the When Fruits Bounce worked because it was funny. So I think it's just, we have kind of a, personality to live up to at this point, and are working towards that. So overarchingly, and this is my last slide, and I'll open it up for questions, but, our key learnings of all of this are be authentic. We took to heart to be authentic, both in the way that we responded to Nathan's video originally, as well as how we approach our content on a day-to-day basis. Be platform deliberate. So moving from our former strategy of creating content for Facebook and then putting it across all the platforms doesn't work. We've shown through our engagement rates that it works much better to be platform deliberate and surround the consumer with our messaging. Leverage content from other people. You don't have to take that burden on yourself of creating every single piece of content. You're paying for it. You're spending the time ideating around it and finding talent for it and all these different things, where you have influencers and just regular users out there who are doing really cool things that you can leverage. And there are benefits to that beyond just the, additional pieces of content that you're getting from them. And finally, and I think most importantly, don't be afraid to fail. So we jumped into TikTok blind. We jumped into this new personality and this new strategy in social media completely blind. We started putting out things that were risky, that were not really, it's a year ago or even 6 months ago, we probably would have been laughed out of our room if we had went to senior leadership saying we were going to do some of these things. And then we were given the runway, with our new audience to be able to try new things, and the fact that it's okay to fail has helped us to learn. And so we've definitely learned. We've had a couple of misses that taught us certain things. I think, we've learned that certain going too far into like the cancel culture direction, for instance, is probably something we want to stay away from. And, you know, on the flip side, we have to be cognizant that there are people out there that have that mentality. And so we have to balance that. So there's a lot of different things that we've learned. And again, we have failed. We had the Blonde Goblin video was another example where there were a couple of inappropriate words in that video, not the most inappropriate words, but some of them. And, you know, that was just something where we got a couple of people who you know, sent us messages and they weren't happy about it. And they felt like, you know, as a wholesome brand, we shouldn't be doing that. And that's a risk that we're willing to take at this point for the benefit of the people who did enjoy it. So again, just not being afraid to fail and jumping into an opportunity that you feel is right and authentic and the right fit for the brand. Obviously that being the North Star and that being most important has been a critical learning for us. And having the support of senior leadership has been great. I just have to say, kind of on a personal level, that we wouldn't be able to be where we are today without the balance of, you know, my team being able to be nimble and create and try new things and explore, as well as the support from senior leadership of saying, you know, here, let me help guide you through how our brand is shifting and how we see the overarching brand strategy shifting. And so we can make sure that what we're doing is still fitting into the overarching brand message, but at the same time, we're still able to have the runway to do the right thing on each social platform for the audience that we're speaking to on those platforms. So that has been extremely helpful and something that I'm really thankful for as well. And so with that, I think that's all the kind of content that I had for today, but happy to answer any questions or talk more about any of this.
Melanie, thank you so much. That was amazing. In the second year, we take the marketing class in the first year of classes in the MBA program. And I wish that I had gotten to see this last year when, immersed in all these marketing readings and things. But luckily we have some first year MBA students on this call as well. Does anyone have any questions for Melanie?
I have a question. So you mentioned how for user-generated content, you kind of let them, decide how they want to activate the brand. So is there any concerns with them coming up with something that's not on brand with Ocean Spray? And how do you guys take care of that? Or, does it have to get approved by you guys first before them posting it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do still generally approve the posts. So, and typically also we would start with either a brief, depending on how big of a program it is. If it's, a true influencer campaign, then we'll start with the brief. If it's more of a TikTok, hey, we like you, or someone approaches us and says, hey, we want to do something with your brand, it might just be direct messages. But we typically give them some information up front about, what we'd like them to accomplish and what our goals are. And generally, I think, these people, this is what they do for a living. So they generally, I think, have a idea based on what your feed looks like, what's okay and what's not okay. But that being said, we do still take that step of reviewing. Sometimes it's even something as silly as they're using an old package and we want to make sure that we're catching that. And so it's important, even beyond the brand safety conversation, which is an important one, but even beyond that, it's certain little things that they wouldn't even catch that we will. So sometimes we go back to them with feedback and sometimes we don't.
Is it fair to say that you're able to to take greater risks on social media, and in other words, an experiment with trial and error?
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I think it helps too that what we're doing is either organic or a low spend. versus, you know, a paid social media campaign that again tends to be more focused on hitting a certain message because our KPIs for that campaign are probably going to be driving sales, right? Where what I'm doing on TikTok might be driving sales, but that's not the expectation, right? Where our goal is that we're going to get engagement, and that's what our organic social is intended to be. You know, it's generating those followers and the loyalty and the engagement. It's not about driving sales as much as we'd love that, and that's a positive. You know, when we are able to see it like we were with Nathan. But yes, social gives us the opportunity to test and learn and to fail with much lower repercussions than if we were to test a TV campaign.
Hi, Melanie. Thanks for joining us. Oh, sorry, Jack.
Sorry, last question. What would you say is your most challenging aspect of your job?
I would say that, you know, having to stretch kind of like I have over this past year and really completely shift who we are as a brand has absolutely been the most challenging thing I've been faced with, I think, in my career. And you know, it's tough because you hear from leadership, it's okay to take risks. We want to be risque. We want to be out there. But at the same time, if I post something, you know, in the moment, you know, even a comment, right, on someone else's post where we're trying to be provocative, we're trying to be risque. But if you post something that goes the wrong way, it's like, then it's going to come back to me. Even though I know that I have, you know, the approval to do it, it's still, it's taking that accountability. That's really challenging for me personally. I've always been very much of like rules follower, and I want to do the right thing and follow a brief and follow those guidelines. And I haven't been able to do that, right? We've had to like throw a stone in a pond and hope that it has that ripple effect. And so I think just having to break away from that and be a lot more nimble and take those risks has been a huge challenge for me.
Melanie, my question was thinking about, you know, there's so many positives to social media, but then there's also obviously some negatives. And sometimes, unfortunately, people leave comments or things that might not be appropriate. How does your team, or who's responsible for kind of a little bit of quality control, knowing when to remove posts, but then also probably responding to some that need responses? So I'm just curious about the process.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we have an agency that does our community management. And so I lead them. So generally, actually, this is a good example too of some of the changes we've made. So before Nathan's video came out, I actually approved every response that they put out. So we use Sprinklr as a social media system. I would go in Sprinklr every couple hours and kind of go through my queue and approve every response that was going to go out to any consumer. We had been working with these people for a couple of years now. And so for the most part, I would approve everything. You know, I would generally look and make sure there wasn't anything crazy. And occasionally I'd find a couple things that I would push back on or change. But because of the volume of things that started coming in after the video, I had to just give them the carte blanche to post. I was like, you know, and we post less, right? We used to respond to almost everybody, and obviously we can't do that anymore. So we had to create those new guidelines of what's response worthy, what's worthy of a like, and what do we just let go. And so I had to rethink those rules of engagement a little bit. I think generally, if there's anything that's like questionable, the agency will come to either me or my social person and come and say, you know, what do you think about this? Should we engage? Should we take it offline? So a lot of times, you know, certain questions or issues that are posed on social media, we don't want to remove them. We'd just rather take the conversation offline. So we'll respond and just ask that they call or email us so we can talk to them one-to-one. The only time we remove things, and we do have kind of rules of engagement posted on our social platform. So if anyone ever questioned why we removed something, it has to go against those guidelines. So, you know, of course, profanity, anything inappropriate or you know, kind of all the basics that you would expect us to remove, we do. But negative comments or or issues or, pictures of mold in our products. Like these are all things that are out there, and we do leave them up and just make sure that it's clear that we've responded.
Great, thank you. I have another question. If nobody else does, I can jump in. But my other question would be, I feel like, so I don't know the back end of TikTok, obviously, just as a user, but do you get really good demographic information? Is like, no, I was curious to see, like, would it tell you certain demographics like Facebook does? So, but it's, yeah.
No. We get absolutely nothing from TikTok except a number.
That's hard because then you really can't validate who your audience is.
Very hard. I think our hypotheses, obviously based on the user base of TikTok, that's one big identifier for us, and the other is because we acquired most of our new Instagram followers from something that happened on TikTok, and those are a younger audience. We have a pretty strong hypothesis of who our audience is, but yeah, we're really hopeful that as TikTok grows as a platform over the next few months, that's something that they improve upon is giving more access to insights and information about your channel.
One more question. Yeah. How do you value like the number of followers or engagement? Since you said, you're about engagement, not necessarily about driving sales. So how do you, make your pitch to top executive and say, like, this is where we need to invest because this is the type of value it's going to bring. And that value might not necessarily be dollar amounts.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are trying to get a read on lift or sales through a marketing mix model. It's really difficult just because the marketing mix modeling process is very heavily based on a spend. So really it's two numbers that they model. It's spend and impressions. And so we have impressions, but we aren't spending, but then we are spending on production, but generally the marketing mix doesn't take into account production costs. So we're working through that with our analytics team and trying to see if we can get a read, because to your point, like, the higher I go up the chain, they don't care about the engagement, right? They care about the sales. And they know that it's important that we're doing what we're doing. And I think, again, just because of the way Nathan's video impacted, it did impact our sales. So we saw a lift, actually the lift on Cran Raspberry during that time, which Cran Raspberry generally has a pretty steady, sales number. But Cran Raspberry during that time was up 11%. So, it was a significant sales lift. All of our blends were up over 3%. And so we did see a sales lift from Nathan's video. And I think that helped me to, just because I think in their heads now they're saying, okay, like social media does something, social media drives sales, and our paid social does show strong ROIs in our marketing mix model. So the combination of all of those things helps us to just continue to be able to do what we're doing and support, the dollars that we need for production. But if we were to go back and say like, hey, we need a lot of additional dollars for production, which actually we're kind of wrangling right now because we have been spending more than we did in the past because we completely changed our strategy and we're needing more net new content that takes a little bit more time and effort to put together. So that's just something that we have to continue to work through and figure out how to justify.
I don't know if I missed this question, Melanie, but I'm curious. I know you talked about having support of senior leadership. Early on, though, because TikTok being TikTok and it maybe had a reputation, was it hard to bring senior leadership on board, or did you lead with numbers? Was there any pushback?
No.
And that's great.
I think also, so Tom Hayes, who's our current CEO, joined the company, I believe 3 months, maybe 2 months before that happened. Wow. So he was very new as our CEO, to the point where we didn't know him very well. We didn't know how he was going to respond to it all. And we were kind of taking his lead and working very closely with our PR team and everyone to get on the same page of everything. And I'll never forget the day that I got the call from our head of PR saying, hey, Tom's going to get on a skateboard and do the video tomorrow. It's like, okay, cool. And he did, and he created his TikTok. So he launched a TikTok before we did. And that was actually part of what inspired us to say, like, because we were still at the beginning, we're like, we're not ready for this. We're not doing TikTok. And then Tom launched a TikTok. He got like, I want to say it was like 60,000 followers. Just from the one video of him recreating Nathan's video. So we said, you know what, we're going to jump in and figure it out. So we created it. So yeah, no pushback, which was awesome. And even, you know, even once we got past that point and it was like, okay, now we want to create some content that might be a little bit different than what we've seen before. And again, we got on the phone with, at that point, it wasn't our CEO, but we talked all the way up to our chief operating officer at the time. And he was like, you guys do what you have to do. He's like, I'm giving you a blank checkbook and I'm giving you carte blanche to take risks. Go do it. So it's, you know, things have evolved since then. That was in the peak in October. But it was just really nice. Like that will stick with me, just knowing like that I had that support. And that's, I think, still making me feel like, you know, I can make these decisions and my gut is telling me the right thing. And even though it might feel weird to take some of these risks, like I know that they're valued.
Yeah, that's excellent.
So are you guys, you feel like you have a different edge than many other companies, because going with TikTok itself seems to have its measure of risk. What's different about your leadership, and why are they different?
Yeah, I think, you know, the brands that we look at too now for inspiration are also very different than before. So we used to look more at like our direct competitors. And now we look at like fast food chains. They have the best social media. Yeah. If you guys don't follow all the fast food chains on social, follow them all. They're amazing. And we still, even though that's what we're aspiring to, and we have been for a couple of months now, we still get comments like from leadership or from other people saying, how do we be more like Wendy's? We have to be more like Wendy's. And we're like, that's what we're working on, guys. We're trying. We can't be Wendy's overnight, but we're really trying. And so I think, you know, again, the timing of the leadership changeover and the perspective I think of, so Tom came from Tyson. And I think, you know, again, just a different type of brand, actually probably closer into those fast food chains and that kind of feeling. And I think it helped. A lot of things really lined up at the right time to help us be able to do what we're doing.
A question, kind of, have you seen other kind of your more traditional competitors trying to like mimic your approach on social media, or even, you know, the emergence of, you know, company TikToks where, you know, they didn't have like an organic video like Nathan's go viral?
We haven't. I'm actually kind of surprised by it because previously Welch's and us kind of went tit for tat in that way, and we would often riff off of what each other was doing. And Welch's, I don't know if you guys all saw this, but probably like a year ago, they went really heavy into like looking for a male target, and they had a campaign that kind of failed on Twitter, and they were really trying to acquire males, and we got them and didn't really try. Yeah. And so I think they're really jealous of what we're doing, but I haven't seen them or anyone else really do that. The closest we've gotten, ironically, is there's this Sunny D account on TikTok that we don't even think is actually the brand, but it's unclear. They're not verified, but they say they're official, but I don't know if they actually are, because they're really out there and they'll like come at us. And so we just generally kind of get in these like weird back and forth wars with them, but that's the closest we've gotten.
Oh, funny. That's fascinating.
It's very random.
Melanie, are there any other socials that you think are like up and coming, or like new stage that you're looking at, or you just feel like you're investing in TikTok for a while and ride it out?
just investing in TikTok at this point to ride it out. I think we're keeping our eyes out on, like, you know, there's a competitor to TikTok, and now their name is escaping me, but that was like trying to get up there. There's Clubhouse that's trying to become a thing. I think nothing at this point has stood out in a way where we've seen other brands succeeding, which is generally our you know, North Star. Is like, we're not going to jump into a platform if like McDonald's isn't there, right? It's, you know, it doesn't have to be Welch's jumping in, but we have to see other brands participating and seeing some success. And right now we're pretty happy in where we're playing. I think I didn't mention Pinterest much in this, but we are very active on Pinterest, and it's very recipe driven, and it's still more of that older content that we did and we advertise there. And so, you know, we're really on all of the core social platforms that are big right now, except for Snapchat, which we keep an eye on. But we kind of jumped into TikTok before Snapchat, and now it's like almost we don't need them.
No, that's funny. Yeah, that's all the questions I have. I'm fascinated by the TikTok because I just feel like it was so user driven, and now you see more and more brands on it, and how are people engaging, and then the ending up on like different sides of TikTok, like the foodie TikTok versus this. I'm like, how do we get over there? Like, what's going on the other side?
I'm still learning all of that.
There's so much information.
Yeah. And it's a black hole too. So be careful with TikTok, because it can suck you in and you're like, where did the last 3 hours just go?
Where did I end up?
Yeah. It's crazy.
I know we only have a couple minutes left. Does anybody else have a final question? Or I know some of you are working with practicum groups that maybe are kind of questioning where they should be, or how their marketing should be used, or if they have staff to run these social networks. So if anybody has a final question, feel free to jump in.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Okay, yeah. So I'm actually a new marketer. I just I'm taking my marketing class this semester.
Great.
So I'm pretty new. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for this wonderful presentation. And one question I had is, my understanding is consumers normally they do not necessarily like to follow an industrial brand, right? So I was very surprised to hear actually you got a lot of followers by TikTok, right?
Yeah, you know,
can you elaborate a little bit on that? Yeah, what contributed to that actually?
Yeah, of course, that's a really good question. I do think the tide is turning a little bit on that. That was absolutely, a big issue a while back. And I think people are still opposed to more like product-centric and, content that feels like an ad. And I think that's where our strategy of being consumer-centric is so important, because if you're giving them something of utility, they're much more inclined to want to follow you, to want to be a part of what you have to offer. And it's actually something that we're extending, beyond social, because we've had such success with it. And one of our other goals, outside of social is getting more first party data. And so how do you get people to give you their data, which is obviously, especially at this moment in time, a very hot topic with privacy restrictions. And it's the same thing. It's like nobody wants another like brand's newsletter and, junk mail and whatnot. So they're worried about their personal data as well. So it's just so important that you're giving them something that they want. On social, I think we've found that to be humor, lighthearted, positive messages, something that they're just going to see in their feed and it's going to make them laugh. And it's not like doom and gloom news, because I just think that's what we've become so accustomed to, especially over the past year and a half. So that's helped us to, I think, kind of break through that being seen as a brand or as a corporate entity. And I think the other piece that's important for Ocean Spray is telling that farmer-owned cooperative story, because we're not a corporate brand. And so I think, again, especially millennials and Gen Z being more purpose driven, we're seeing that as people recognize that they're supporting family farmers versus supporting Wall Street, that also helps us break through. So those are kind of where we're leaning into to continue to grow and engage our followers and database.
Okay, thanks.
Great question.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Melanie, for your time. And it's so nice to see you and meet you. I know we connect a lot on social media, so it's nice to put a face with a name. But thank you very much for jumping on with us today. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was great.
Oh, wonderful. And thank you all for attending. And I will send out the recording as well for those who couldn't attend live.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.